Welcome, this is Ad Emmen. I'm reporting from a virtual studio, and our guest today is Erik Fledderus from Surf and from e-IRG. So, welcome, Erik.
Thank you. Welcome, Matt.
I saw a presentation from you at the e-IRG workshop, and at the e-IRG workshop you told a lot about partnerships and how that could be used or seen as a modeling for e-infrastructure organizations. So can you tell a little bit about that?
Yes, the theme of the workshop was partnerships, and it was very much started off as a discussion on the partnerships that are going to happen around the European Open Science Cloud. And my focus was slightly more from the point of a member state. So what type of partnerships are occurring there, and one step back, what is a partnership actually solving? What is it trying to solve? And taking that as a starting point, I discussed a number of building blocks that at the moment occur within the Netherlands, and that can help us to build two types of partnerships.
Okay, so the so partnerships, it's quite a general term. So what is typically a partnership? What are the important elements of a partnership?
A partnership is, in my opinion, something that tries to solve a number of questions on a level that is beyond the daily user and the daily interactions. And within this, without this partnership, these users or the service providers at some point run into situations that are difficult to solve. And quite often they are very creative and try to solve this in an ad hoc fashion, but there's always has its shortcomings. And I think a partnership can try to solve that in a more structural way. So I think a key element of a partnership is that it tries to solve a very concrete issue from daily practice in a more structural way. Well, one thing is what I call a vertical partnership. That is that many of the e-infrastructures and the infrastructure services that are provided by an organization like Surf, but you also have others similar like Surf in other countries. These infrastructures and services are there for users. That may be scientists, scientific communities. They may be very national. They may be quite often quite international, so cross-border. And then you go to the daily practice of what scientists, researchers say get for their well try to solve besides the science, but especially the use of these infrastructures. They're quite advanced. So that takes quite some time to get it really into their field. And one of the issues that they really have to deal with is how is this used? How is it funded? Do I have to cater for that within my project budget, or is someone else taking care of that?
Okay, and are you now talking about the national e-infrastructures, about the organization of the national e-infrastructures and the national funding?
Well, it happens both in a national, but definitely also in an international situation. So suppose you have a large cooperation with your colleagues in a specific field that may be a European project, but it may also be organized without already being a European project. But you work with colleagues from all across Europe, maybe across all the world, and you want to have a collective facility to store data, to do to compute on the data, to visualize results, to collaborate on papers and to share your results and to share your data. I think the open science community or the open science movement really aims for those type of interactions. Well, the next question is, okay, do we have to cater for that ourselves, or is there something out there outside our community, outside our interaction that we can use? And of course, quite often commercial off-the-shelf facilities are quite well known. I mean, we use it also for in our daily lives, but they are quite often not really useful for the quite advanced things that a scientific community wants to aim at. So if that is the case, or the question is, it's there, but it's very expensive. How is this being resolved? And so this is not only happening within a member state, but also across member states.
Is there also, I mean, on the European level, one is talking about the European Open Science Cloud and Euro HPC and some very big initiatives.
Mm-hmm.
How should the connection be between local initiatives or national initiatives and the European Open Science Cloud? Will that be dictated by a few big countries with big national organizations, or by the smaller ones, or is there some flexibility? How do you see that developing?
Yeah, I don't know whether it will be dictated by countries. The point of the starting point that I took was, I mean, these are quite big questions, but these are also questions that already are there already for a long time. So how would you resolve that within a country? So instead of starting directly from the European Open Science Cloud, start from a national Open Science Cloud. How would you resolve then this issue? This vertical type of partnership that you would like to establish, but also its counterpart, a horizontal type of partnership where you talk about e-infrastructures on a national scale, but also on a more local scale within a university or within an institute. You see that especially when it comes to data, we don't want to have a very centralized approach that all the data is centralized, stored somewhere in a country or on a continent, but very much a hybrid federated type of approach. But the various instances need to interact quite smoothly. So starting from a national open science cloud point of view, what type of regulations, what type of partnership would you like to establish? What is possible? And then every member state has its flavors. I think the national note report from the e-IRG also shows that. So I really have to go back to what is possible within the Netherlands and see what type of partnerships and rules around these partnerships I can export to the discussion table of EOSC. So this is, I would say, the things that a member state can put on the table of the executive board when it comes to how to arrange such a partnership on European scale. And coming back to your question, will that be an issue of the big states, the big member states will dictate how that will be possible? I would say how many different regulations are needed within the various member states, come up with a few that show to be quite effective, and try to interact between these ways of operations. So much more focusing on what effective ways of operations do we have in the various member states instead of big countries dictate, etc.
Yeah, I mean, dictating is a very strong word, of course, but I mean more dominating, which is also a strong word. Anyway,
yeah.
how do you see the, so there's clearly a lot of discussion needed before we decide it and things are getting to work. How do you see the role of the e-IRG in that?
I think the e-IRG should definitely continue its work when it comes to getting grip on the various ways a member state organizes itself without prescribing how it should work, but more first, I would say a first step is illuminating, getting transparent how things are organized, why things are organized the way they are. If you want to say transgress from there, you could advise member states how their colleagues, their neighbors are organizing themselves. And I think in the past 5 to 10 years, you see definitely member states learning from each other. I've been quite active in Scandinavia, in Sweden and Finland, and also within Germany a few times. And there you see that the discussion on how you want to organize this is really taking into account expertise from neighboring countries. So there's really quite an active looking over the fence and learning from each other. And I think e-IRG can really stimulate that by taking this information, by broadening it, not just a few spots that are quite clear and present and are quite active in communicating their strategy, but also from other member states that are not that active in communicating their information. So you really get it forward. And I think that's a really important step and a really important role that I think is also observed by the executive board from the EOSC. A next step could be, and I'm careful with being very strong in that, but it could be saying, okay, taking all the ways things are now arranged within the various member states, what would be a top 4, top 5 ways of arranging it depending on your starting position? Because we know that changing that it takes a change of many actors, and that will be difficult. That will take time. So you shouldn't be very over optimistic by saying, okay, we have just one way of arranging it and you all have to comply. I think that is not realistic. So what is a top 4, top 5 way of arranging it?
Okay, I'm looking forward to these discussions and what comes out. So thank you very much for this interview.
Okay, thank you.
This was Ad Emmen reporting.